Hola amigos e bienvenidos a mi canal e vlog número 2. So, today we are going to talk about the immersion method and how to use the immersion method in the pursuing of your target language. And in this video, I'm going to give you some helpful tips and tricks for what to work on in immersing yourself and some of the things that I do in my journey to Spanish fluency. Then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you guys some recommendations for online resources that I use and just sort of ways that I think you can best utilize them. So, entremos en ello. As I mentioned in my last video, the immersion method is really the method that is focused on making every aspect of your life, converting it into your target language. So ideally, someone should experience the immersion method by moving to the country where that language is the mother tongue. But there are ways that we can simulate that if we live in a country that doesn't speak that language. So for example, if I wanted to immerse myself in Spanish, my target language, I would move back to Costa Rica, which is where I got this blanket that I've been using for set design. That way I would be immersed in Spanish, which is the language that I'm trying to learn. Even though, of course, they do speak English and very good English in Costa Rica. Now, because most of my audience probably does live in the US, where we primarily speak English, we do have to find kind of creative ways to immerse ourselves in our target languages here in the US. Some things that I like to do in Spanish to help better immerse myself are listen to podcasts, watch movies, listen to music in Spanish, and read books in Spanish. So I really like Camilo for Spanish music. I really like watching kids movies, like Disney movies in Spanish for better immersion, because you already know kind of what they're saying basically. I really like the podcast Immersive Spanish on Spotify. And then something that's really helpful is speaking to yourself or journaling in your target language. So for me, in Spanish, because that actually converts sort of your inner dialogue into your target language. So I'm no longer speaking to myself in English, I'm actually doing it in Spanish. That way you can also sort of see what it looks like when you write Spanish, and you kind of just convert your more persona into Spanish or whatever target language that you're pursuing. Something that I did when I was becoming fluent in Latin was actually to recap my day to myself while I was brushing my teeth. Every day I would just talk about my day, what I did that day, and say it all in Latin so that I could get a better grasp on language. And I would also try to use new vocabulary that I didn't know before but I just learned. I would also suggest keeping some kind of logbook or little diary of like new words and phrases that you're learning that you want to use more often in your own dialogue with yourself, in your journals, in your conversation with other people. Just keep like a journal or diary or something that has all the new vocabulary that you've learned, as well as any interesting phrases. And then when you are conversing, you can kind of remember, oh yeah, I really want to try out the new usage of like this word or that word. Some online resources that I would highly recommend are, first off, Duolingo. Obviously, it's free, so why not give it a try? It's a quick dopamine hit in the day, and it's better for you than just scrolling TikTok. On Duolingo, you can also practice your accent, which is super cool and pretty helpful. It also keeps you kind of competitive and keeps you off other social media apps. So I really like Duolingo. I know it gets some flack, but it is pretty useful. Again, make sure in Duolingo that you are keeping a notebook of new phrases and terms, because with Duolingo you can't really go back and look at stuff that you've already learned, so it's really helpful to keep a notebook for that. Next, a really helpful one is Lingoda. I have not personally used Lingoda, but a lot of the polyglot influencers that I follow really like Lingoda. It is a little bit more expensive, but I think it's probably the best as far as the immersion method. You actually get to talk to other people who are actually native in your language just via like Zoom and FaceTime. It's almost like paying for an online language tutor in the language that you're trying to learn, and it is much more intense. Lingoda is probably better if you're trying to learn a language pretty quickly and definitely immersively. So I would check out Lingoda. I'll mention a lot of those influencers in the description of this video so you guys can check out their videos on Lingoda. Now, Babbel is one that I have used. Again, it costs money. It's not super expensive, but I actually used it when I was learning Swahili when I moved to Kenya, and it is super helpful. It is very methodical and sort of logical, very left-brained. If you're a big reader and writer type learner, Babbel is probably for you. It's not super heavy on like speaking and listening, but more on reading and writing. So Babbel's super helpful with that. Some YouTubers and podcasters that I love who are polyglots are Joe Franco. She speaks like 7 or 8 languages. Unjaded Jade, she's super cool. She has lived all over the world and been immersed in a lot of languages and learned them all pretty much through immersion. And then Nathaniel Drew, also a polyglot from lots of different cultures. And all of them have really great videos on kind of how to become a polyglot, how to learn languages quickly, how to be immersed in languages, and then kind of how to keep that up. So they're super helpful. Definitely check them out. Their links will be in the description of the video. Gracias por ver. Dale me gusta y suscríbete de Aprendizaje de Idiomas. Make sure to comment below what language learning resource you're interested in using over spring break for your immersion method.